conversation features ordinary people sharing their experiences in life and in business, and those who found the courage to deal with life's challenges so that you and I can learn from it, heal from it, and grow from it. Today, we're going to be talking to Kevin Kolbe. Don't go away. We'll be right back. If you've just joined us, welcome to the conversation with Bridgetti. I'm your host, Bridgetti Lim Banda from Cape Town in South Africa. We'd love to know where you are joining us from. The show today is made possible by StreamYard and Be Live Media. So a special warm welcome to all of you. Let us know if you are brand new to the show. We would love to give you a shout out. And in today's show, we're going to be talking to Kevin Kolbe. He is a content creator and a coach with a background in radio and TV, affiliated to very well-known stations such as Fox, NBC, CBS, and ABC. He helps creators, nonprofits, businesses, and entrepreneurs around the world use online video. Kevin is also a husband, a father of 3, including one with special needs. So let's welcome him onto the show, shall we?
How's it going? I'm jamming on your music. You can see me in the green room. I was like this. I was bouncing the whole time.
It's awesome to have you join me. Thank you so, so much. You know, I'm always blown away by the amazing amount of people we get to meet on our journey doing online video. I have met phenomenal people like yourself from all over the world and developed great friendships. And we've never met in person. It's one of the things that I've grown to really, really, really love and appreciate about live streaming. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you pivoted from radio and TV. You know, what made you morph into live streaming? How did you get there?
Yeah, it's so, and by the way, I totally agree with you too. This is one of the coolest things about what we do is just getting to talk with people around the world that, I mean, a few years ago would have been hard to do. I don't even have to do a cell phone, you know, we can do it this way. And I love that. And thank you for having me on. You know, growing up, I wanted to be a lot of different things, but I was always fascinated with radio, always fascinated with radio. In fact, there was a point where I had a little turntable, a record player with some stack of 45s. Some people will know what that means. And I would play DJ in my bedroom, and I was just fascinated with it. And then jump forward to when I started college, I actually had the opportunity to join a radio station. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. And so I was on the radio for several years and thought, you know, this is it. This is what I want to do. In fact, people would say, well, do you ever want to get into television? And I'm like, nope, not me. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew you could spell it with 2 letters, TV. That's all I knew about it. Then I had an opportunity to get into television and absolutely loved it. And just as my career went over the, however long I was in it, 30 something years, maybe, there was always something exciting. And then the last time I was in television, I was actually the creative director at a Fox station and had an absolutely amazing team, far more creative than me, which I was cool with. And we just did a lot of neat stuff. And, you know, what was really neat is we were an entertainment based station as opposed to more like a news based station. So we could do a lot of different things. We produced programming and you know, we did commercials, but we did a lot of events and some really cool stuff. So, you know, the irony is the transition into live streaming, like you asked, I mean, coming from a traditional media background, going live, it's just something we did every day. Now, maybe not necessarily on YouTube or Amazon or wherever, but you know, live was just something we did every day. It wasn't something we really thought that much about. Ultimately, though, what happened is my position got eliminated, which happens a lot in industry, period, but especially media. And, you know, for a while, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Do I want to get back into it? And, you know, I always tell folks that, you know, God had closed that chapter and he's like, yeah, got something else for you. So at the time, I had people reaching out asking me, you know, hey, can you help us with this project and this video? And a lot of folks that I knew over time. So I'm like, yeah, I can. And the thought, you know, I love this because it allowed me to work for me, which I enjoy. It allowed me to work out of home, which became a huge blessing, especially with our little son who has special needs, as you mentioned. And I have just found I love to be able to work with nonprofits and businesses and entrepreneurs and other solo creators. And so that's what I do. I create for myself, I create for clients, I create for friends, and it's a blast. You're muted.
A lot of people shy away from getting into live video either because they're not confident about getting onto camera, or they allow the tech to hold them back. And I think a lot of people say it's the tech because, you know, I'll have to buy this and I'll have to buy that and get into this. What would you say to people that allow the technology to hold them back?
Well, and you know, and that's a great point. I hear that all the time. It's either like, you know, I'm not good enough, or I don't have the right gear. Most of the time, I think it's more the gear than the fear of them. You know, for me, I mean, since I started in radio and I had to turn a mic on and talk to somebody, it just and I'm very, you know, I'm just this is the way I am. I probably got it from my mom, so I can talk to anybody at any point, at any time. May not make a lot of sense, but I can do that. And so it was nothing for me just to turn a mic on, turn a camera on, and just talk. But I realized that not everybody feels that way. And as far as the gear, one of the things I always like to say is, you know, gear won't make you creative, but it can help you create. And now with the technology, I mean, you know, this is a 4K camera. Oh, and it's a phone. But, you know, I mean, a few years ago when Apple started promoting the iPhone more as a camera, I think that was a turning point. So, you know, you can live stream and produce video with anything, with a webcam. I used to always say, yeah, you don't want to use your built-in camera on your laptop, but now those have even gotten better. And all it does is when you start buy into that, like, you know, I don't know enough, I don't have the right equipment. It's just a lie you tell yourself that ultimately keeps you from sharing your gifts and doing something. And I guarantee you somebody else is out there who's got maybe a similar idea, and they may go ahead and throw it out there, and it may not be the most polished product, but they're out there. And I think, and see if you would agree with this, it's easy to look at people where they are, quote, successful, whatever that, you know, we all have to define that. And we forget that everybody has a journey. Everybody started somewhere. No actor, name your favorite actor, their probably first role wasn't that amazing. You know, the first singer wasn't that good. And so everybody starts somewhere. So if you can kind of realize that and just put yourself out there, it's amazing what the potential is for creating content, live streaming, however you want to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, if I look back at my first videos now, you know, to me, they look cringeworthy. I was like, you know, do I really want this content out there?
Yeah.
And I've kept it out there because I can say to people, you know, that's where I started.
Yep. Yeah.
And
We all
everyone
start
has
somewhere.
to start
Yeah.
somewhere, and you can only get better with time, you know, so don't let it hold you back. everyone's going to cringe when they look at their first reel. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. You know, and mistakes are going to happen. You know, I mean, I'm a perfectionist, which is not necessarily great for a content creator, because you can overthink, you can overproduce things, you know, but there's a point where, you know, there was a quote I just shared earlier on Twitter. It was like, you know, perfect is the enemy of good, or something like that. Because, you know, if you want to try and make it perfect all the time, you just, that then becomes your creativity killer. Let's just put it out there. The irony is, we think everybody sees everything we do, and the reality of it is very few people do. And so, you know, you can re-air things, and you made a mistake and you lived and try something else. And that's, to me, that's the exciting part of being a content creator, is just, you know, pivoting and experimenting and trying something and just seeing what happens.
You can literally reinvent yourself every day if you want to, until you get it right.
Absolutely.
You know, and so chasing perfection is never really going to happen, because you're never going to be 100% satisfied with whatever you put out there anyway. And just being out there, I think what drew me to live streaming is that it's not, the expectation is not to have it perfect the way a television broadcast is.
Yeah.
That's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's about having conversations like this and allowing people to get to know you. And, you know, it always comes back to that old saying of people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
And
true. Yeah.
If you're putting yourself out there, you're allowing people to get to know you the way that you really are, and you're building relationships, you know. And so people hear that that's what they do. And so when they need that service, guess who they're going to call?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, in the way the world's been the last few years, I mean, there's not anything specifically that I think did this, is I just think more and more people are just craving real and authentic. Now, I think you can overshare, and I think you can be over transparent, but at the same time, I gravitate to more people that I just feel like that's who they are. That's what they do. You know, if I see them somewhere, they're going to be just like that. They show their mistakes. They talk about where their struggles are, and not even just content creators, people in general. But I think those are the people that I gravitate to and go, yeah, you know, we're all human. We all make mistakes, you know, and it's not all the time the ups. We have our downs. And I just think that there's that, you know, and even with businesses, it's like, you know, admitting mistakes, just communication or whatever. I think it can set you apart, because you go, yeah, you know what? I mean, like, we're going to get ready to have our roof done. And a couple of the guys that have come out, we've just had conversations. Haven't even been about roofs. We've just been talking. And I enjoy that, because now I feel like I get to know a little bit more about the people we might be giving a lot of money to to fix our roof.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think we're hopefully moving away from the days when people made mistakes or bad choices or bad decisions in business, and they wouldn't speak to their clients because it's now PR crisis, and they had to call in their PR team to try and fix things. And I think, you know, we're a lot more educated than we were back in the day, and people can see right through a PR spin. I'd much rather have somebody come out and say, hey, I made a mistake.
I agree.
And I'd like to fix it. You know, I'm sorry, and move on, than having a PR company come and manage it. People don't like that form of insincerity anymore, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. And I agree. I think it's funny, because I think people can, a lot of people can just see right through it. It's just, I think, you know, could you imagine, I know we live in different countries, but could you imagine the state of politics if politicians would just say, like, hey, look, I blew that forecast, or, you know what, I messed up. We would probably be trying to vote them in every time we could, because I think that's a refreshing. But when they, and it's not just politicians, it's actors, it's business people. When they start
Everyone.
positioning, it's just like, dude, I can see through you. I'm not buying it.
Absolutely. And so when somebody typically wants to engage your services, how do they reach out to you? Do you do the whole thing for them? Do you sit down and plan their event with them? Or do you work with their marketing team typically? Do you do everything for them from scratch?
It really depends on what they need. Like I've had some clients that I've just coached. Like they wanted to, I mean, they were very successful in their business and they wanted to get, most of them want to get a little bit more into video. They realize that I can, they can be doing more with it to help grow their business. So it's like, helping them just even get started, to what software to use and things like that. As far as, I mean, I haven't really had to work with marketing team. That sounds horrible. I haven't worked with marketing teams because most of the businesses and nonprofits I work for, I'm working directly with either the marketing director or the CEO, or it may be a small team, but I typically am always talking to the decision makers. And even if they need to run it up just a little bit more, it's not that big of a deal. But as far as, the funny thing is I've never advertised. So much, I guess all of my stuff has come from word of mouth. I've had people reach out to me because of my YouTube channel, brands and sponsors and some companies. They saw my YouTube channel and wanted to know if I wanted to talk. That's why it's always important to have a contact on there. It's easy to find. I've had people reach out through my website, some on social media, DMing on Twitter or Instagram, but a lot of it is word of mouth. I had 3 clients that I coached, was it last year? And they all came via the same friend who's in marketing, and he recommended me and I connected with them. And in fact, one of the clients, our coaching sessions are over, but now we remain friends. And which to me is a compliment. When we were done and he said, Kevin, one day I hope we can have a beer together. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. As opposed to, I hope I never see you again. You wasted my time.
Yeah.
But I have different clients that do different things. So like there's a friend of mine who's also a client, and I've produced all of her online courses. She's a silversmith, amazing silversmith. And we just started working together and we produced them together. It's like she's the star, if you will, but we literally go into it like a team and work on it together. And then other ones, it's like the project of, I may work with a nonprofit, understand what they want, but then I may shoot it, edit it. I usually never front it because a lot of times it's like somebody with the nonprofit that needs to or wants to be on camera, and that's fine with me. But that it's really a variation of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
It's all about relationship building, isn't it? Sort of like a relationship marketing exercise. It's how can you not work with somebody on a production and not walk away as friends, because it's such an intimate relationship. Especially if you're working behind the scenes. You really got to be able to pick up on the person's cues, when they're struggling with something or technology or whatever it is. So you've got to be able to sort of really know the person well enough to pick up when there's an issue or where you need to step in. And I really like that aspect.
I agree. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I do think I mean, if somebody thinks you're just after their money, and I mean, look, I do need to make money. I have a family to feed, but if you're not really invested in them and not want them to see, a lot of times what I will tell folks that I meet with, and some, there's probably more times than not, I don't get the job because it's, they either the project, doesn't go through or they go with somebody else or whatever. But I always tell them that, your success is my success. And that's how I look at it. Whatever project we're working on, however we're doing it, I need you to be successful. And I've had some clients go, well, what do you think? Do you like it? And I'm like, well, do you like it? That's the important thing. Do you like it? Does it work for you? Because if it doesn't really matter what I think. It really doesn't. Now, I mean, I guide them, and I'll say straight up, I don't know this is where you need to be placing your money or how you need to be doing it. But ultimately, I want them to go, yeah, that worked. So.
Yeah. No, I totally am with you on that one. I want to pivot a little bit into talking about special needs.
Okay.
It is something close to my heart. I think there are a lot of parents out there who still struggle by themselves and they don't know where to even start. There's school, there's social engagement, the way that it affects your family life, your interaction with your friends and family. It's a huge adjustment, so I'm going to start with asking you, if somebody discovers that their child has got special needs, what is your advice? Where do they start to look for help?
Yeah, and that is a fantastic question. I have joked before, and when I say joke, not as a joke, but on some level, we all have special needs. Some of the needs are different, right? And some disabilities are, I mean, like we know a family that has 3 kids, and the oldest and the youngest are both autistic. But they're on different parts of the spectrum, and they're completely different. I mean, completely different. In fact, the youngest one, I didn't even know was autistic for a while. So, you run into that. But, it can be jarring when it happens, because there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of questions out there, and a lot of times you don't get the answers you want, or you don't get them when you want. But what I can say is there's a lot more people out there that are in the community. Like, our youngest son has what's called LGS. It's Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. And it's not as widespread as, say, autism, or ALS or something like that. But it still impacts people, kids mainly. And when you find out that there are other people and families that have that, all of a sudden there's a community right there. And my wife, huge kudos to her. I mean, she found a Facebook group, a support group of I think it's more moms, maybe families, but in our state, in the States. And that's where they'll get on there and, has anybody had any issue with this insurance? Or does anybody need a stroller? Or can somebody recommend a park? And all of a sudden, people that you don't maybe know, you feel a kinship with. And so I would say, the worst thing you can do is just kind of hole up, and everybody's different, and just go, wow, look at this bad hand we've been dealt. I don't know what to do, as opposed to reach out. And it could be through your church. It could be through a community center. It could be through a local organization. There's a lot of great nonprofits out there that are set up to help with people find services, and reach out to other people too. And, that's where I would start. That's where I would absolutely start, and realize, life is going to change. I mean, our life now is very different than it was several years ago. But going back to what I do for a living, I mean, it's a blessing. I work for myself. I mean, this really cool looking office I have, studio, is a renovated bedroom in our home. So it makes it nice if I need to pop downstairs, and, or we need to take him to the doctor or something like that. So there is a community out there. You may have to look a little for it, but I would say find it, get involved in it, and be real. I mean, just, cry if you need to, ask questions if you need to. And any parent has to be an advocate for their child. You just have to. But especially when you have a child with disability, you've got to really, really be an advocate for them, and that's what we are. So, but we don't love ours. We've got 3 kids, and we love them all the same. They all get annoying at times, but we still love them all the same.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you about, advocating for your child, because sometimes you actually have to fight with the medical profession,
Oh yeah.
because the thing is, as parents, some parents of special needs children may be in the medical profession, but that's not generally true for most special needs parents.
Right.
But you as a parent, when there's something wrong with your child.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, how do you deal with the frustrations of taking your child to a doctor or to a hospital and they say there's nothing wrong with your child, but something is wrong?
Yeah, we've had that happen some. There was an incident about a year or so ago. I forgot what it was. I forgot what it was, and they were just adamant that Elias is his name. That Elias had a virus, and it's almost like they just wanted to check the box. And we're like, we know this is not a virus. We know it's not a virus. We're not doctors, but we know it's not a virus. And it's just kind of pushing and pushing, asking questions. And I will say though, we've been very blessed with great specialists and great doctors who really realize that we live this 24/7. So then a lot of times they'll say, well, start describing. Oh, okay. And then they'll start investigating a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, we've had to fight. I don't know if that's the right word, but we've had to fight insurance companies, businesses, doctors, and fight may be a little hard, but it's just sometimes, it's crazy. It's crazy that you have to do that. I'm sure there's great people that work for insurance companies. I'm not a big insurance company fan because of some of the stuff we've gone through.
I think few people
I feel
are,
like, yeah, I feel like sometimes, at least on what we've experienced, sometimes it feels like they're almost looking for the way not to be able to help. Oh, you missed this one little thing. And, that's frustrating, but, we haven't, thankfully that hasn't been an ongoing thing, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you just, it's frustrating at times. It wears you out at times, and then something will happen and it's good, or other people, the network, there's several other moms that my wife has gotten very close to who have sons or kids rather with special needs, and none of them are the same. And, they'll be messaging back and forth. Well, have you tried this? And have you tried everything from like a supplement to a medicine to a place to try and get help with something? And that's huge. That goes back to that community and that support group.
So something else I wanted to touch on is how it has affected your social life. Because I think that's quite a biggie for a lot of people. I know for myself, for example, I live with chronic pain, and people get tired of you canceling on them.
Yeah, sorry, I had to get a sip of water.
So how has it affected your social life?
Let me see. I would be lying if I said we didn't have to adapt and change things. I mean, there have been some times where we haven't gone to an event, and this is long before the pandemic. There's been some times where we haven't gone to an event just because, we have to weigh getting there. And, there was an event, I don't know, not too long ago that we decided that the travel time, and it wasn't that far away, but the travel time and what it would take to take a lot of his stuff, it didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense to do that. And traveling is a whole nother adventure. So, I would say thankfully we have great friends and family that, they know that they have, we may have to adapt and do things. We have, not gone places that we might have gone. But even then, I mean, we've taken him to, he'll sleep through anything. We've taken him to concerts. We've taken him to movies, taken him to the park, taken him to the store. But there have been times where it's like, let's just hang out at home. We're good with that. And then, of course, the pandemic changed everything, right? Completely changed everything. So I don't know that it's been, the funny thing is, and my wife would tell you this, she is far more of an introvert than me. And she's fine with staying at home. Now, I'm getting that more that way. But I'm the one who was like, let's go to a coffee shop. And she's like, well, let's just make coffee here. So, we still have people over occasionally, and we've still gone places. And I will say there's been more times than not when we've gone to a friend or family's house, they will like, what do you need? I mean, they'll be carrying the wheelchair into the house. They'll move a car out of the garage and stuff like that. And that's been huge, and a lot of that is just done out of love, but it affects it some. You're still muted.
How much support have you had from the system in terms of school support for him? And, are you homeschooling him? Does he go to formal school?
Yeah. I gotta say, for the most part, school's been, for the most part, phenomenal. So he changed schools this year. So because of his developmental delays as well, he will always be like, he just started middle school. He'll be in middle school longer than most middle schoolers without disabilities. So that's, he was in elementary school longer. But it was an elementary school with an amazing special needs track. In fact, the principal who was there while we were there up until the last year was a huge proponent for, these kids need to be kids. They need to be included and stuff like that. And then there were other teachers who said, okay, we're going to, like, one teacher I'm thinking of started a book club, and she would bring the kids down to Elias's class and a couple of the other special needs classes, and the kids would read to the special needs kids. And it got to be so popular, they only did it like once a week. The kids wanted to do it more. And that's really cool. And so we've had a lot of support that way, even including things within the school and events and things like that. I will say now, the current teacher we have, so when the pandemic hit, we obviously took him out of school. And we didn't feel comfortable up until a few months ago, him going back, just because anything respiratory to him has the potential to be fatal. So we have to be very, very careful. And we were so close to sending him back. And then they had a spike at the school. And we said, okay, we're going to hold back just a little bit more. But what was really cool is the teacher we were assigned, Ms. Williams, said, well, I tell you what, I'll just come to the home at least once a week just to get to know him until you guys get ready to bring him back. And that started in September, and we didn't send him back till March. And she brought books. And then she even took it a step further. She said, well, we're still doing virtual, because he was doing what's called Virtual Academy. And she said, I'll just even include him on other things. And so by the time he got to go back in person, he knew her voice. And then it was just a matter of learning the room. So that has been absolutely amazing. And so, and again, the school he's at now is, because, when it's new, it's like, ooh, how's this going to be? But his room is huge. And I'm like, okay, this is nice, but it needs to be a lot of times, because you've got wheelchairs and other things in there. But overall, I mean, we've had a couple of hiccups with the school system. And had to kind of go toe to toe with them on a couple of issues. But overall, the teachers, the assistants, the specialists have just been amazing.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So he's not in a special needs school per se.
No.
They just have special needs classes.
Yeah, there are. Now, where we live, not every school is set up that way. So there's like certain schools you can go to, and we always look for the ones closest to us. Like, we take him. We take him and we pick him up. We don't rely on the transportation. And I mean, it's probably great people driving it. We'd rather do it ourselves. And because of my work, I can shift my calendar around and my schedule. And so the schools he has been in and will continue to be in through high school, they have some kind of special needs program where there are full-time teachers that are trained for that. In fact, our teacher's been at this school for 10 years teaching special needs kids. The assistants they go to training, the rooms are adapted. They even have their own, emergency plans because they need to be a little different than the rest of the school. And that's been huge. That's been absolutely huge. Even adapted on the playground and stuff as well. It's just been great.
So do your classrooms, and I'm only asking this question because someone I know is advocating for this and been trying to fight for this for some time. Do your special needs classes have cameras in them? And what do you think of that idea?
I'm trying to think. They don't. I mean, he's been in a total of 3 schools, then now is the 3rd one, and 4 different classes. And none of them have had cameras, but we've always been able to communicate directly with the teacher. A cell phone, not going through the office, just like you can call. But I will tell you right now, I'm a huge advocate of putting cameras in schools. Big time. They could be abused. I get it. But I think, the more eyes that can look in and just see, is everything okay? Are they being okay? Or in the term, I just thought about this. This is a great question. I just thought about this, that in terms of, let's just say our son, he has seizures, but the seizures, there's no typical seizure. So imagine he's having something. Of course, I guess she could still do this with her phone, but then we can hop on a webcam and see what's happening and go, oh, okay, here's what you need to do. So yeah, that would be great. That's a great idea.
Well, I need to hook you up with a co-host on the Writers' Corner show, because she's got 2 special needs children, and she's been fighting for this for a good couple of years.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to him. Yeah.
To have cameras installed in the classrooms, and I think she would appreciate some kind of support on that. I know she's been working on this for many years now.
Yeah. And there's a lot of there's a lot of things in general, but a lot of things have to, it's kind of a game sometimes. If you go back to the insurance stuff, he needs something, it's going to be covered. Insurance has to deny it. Then they have to resubmit it. Then it might, it's this game you play. And we've had things denied. I know we're off on a different topic. We've had things denied before where a surgeon will say he needs this, and the insurance company will go, we're not sure. Well, yeah. Unless you know more than he does, he may need it. I'm just saying. So, but yeah, it's,
to me, there's a lot of advantages. It's the same as a situation with a parent having a nanny cam at home.
Yep.
You are also more at peace at work when you are able to check in and just see that your kid is doing okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
From a sort of well-being perspective, and your child just knowing that, my mom and dad can have a look, it may give them a sense of peace as well.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot more positives than possible negatives to having a camera. And I often think about it, when people talk about they're so against the idea. We've got cameras in the streets. We're photographed everywhere. You walk into a mall, into a store, you're on camera. So how is that any different?
Well, doggy daycares have them. Yeah, it's they're everywhere. And the thing is, it goes back to like gear for creating. They don't have to be that crazy expensive. They really don't.
No.
And it's easy to set up. So yeah, I definitely think that's something that would be great if it could happen in all schools, especially young and special needs, sooner than later. Maybe our politicians will get together and fight over that than the other things they tend to fight about sometimes.
But even just in regular schools, Kevin,
Yeah.
Just to be able to pick up on things that the teacher may miss, because the teacher may have a big class, and perhaps we can catch children before they fall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you can see that there's a trend, or the child has got behavioral discomforts that the teacher may have missed because she's got so many kids to see. So I think there are a lot more benefits than teachers feeling like they're put into a cage. I think that's often the reason why schools are anti, because teachers feel like they're being put under a microscope. But I think it's a mindset thing. Because the teacher could go back. If she missed something, she can go back and look at the video and see, how did I miss that? How could I be more observant? So there's a lot of ways in which it can benefit both the school system, the parents, and the child.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think you're right. And maybe it's something that'll happen sooner than later.
Definitely hope so. Oh my goodness. So in terms of support systems for parents with special needs, apart from the communities, you mentioned that your wife, for example, joined various online groups. And I suppose because, the mom is the sort of primary caregiver,
right?
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the parent who is not the primary caregiver cannot be supportive. And one often hears, though, that I've heard of many situations where couples, it actually breaks up the relationship or they drift apart.
Yeah.
What is your advice to a parent who's possibly facing that kind of situation?
Well, and I've heard those stories too, and it's always sad, and there's so much that can tear at a marriage anyway, and a lot of external things. In fact, we were talking before the show about just sometimes worrying about things that are completely out of our control, money and climate, a lot of things like that we just can't do anything about sometimes. I think if anything, I mean, kids should probably bring you more closer together than apart, even if you have different parenting styles. And I would say, at least as my wife's name, I'd say for the most part, we're lockstep on things. Not always, but then even then, it's like, well, let me try and get her perspective. There's okay. You know what? I don't, as I say, I don't have a dog in this fight. That makes sense. Let's do that. We balance each other well because she is much more intellectual and deeper thinking, and I can tend to kind of be reactionary sometimes. So I kind of I try and take cues from her. It's like, okay, let me rethink this just a little bit. But I do think that it's a team. I mean, it's a team. Marriage should be a team anyway, but then especially when kids are introduced, and then especially if there is a disability or something like that. And we divide up things, but we've never sat down. This might work for some family. We've never sat down and said, okay, you do X, Y, and Z, and I'll do X, A, B, and C, and that way we'll make it work. We've just kind of, I mean, in August, we will have been married 30 years. So at some point, we've kind of learned each other, I guess, at some point. And we kind of have, even our marriage has always worked that way. It's like, I see something that needs to be done. She sees something that needs to be done, but especially with special needs, There's things that she's just taken the ball and run with. And I would only just screw it up if I tried to like, well, let me try, and it's like, no, 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 no. And like, for example, so Elias is on a keto diet to help with seizures, and it has to be mixed up every day because the shelf life is 24 hours. And I took over that recently when she was sick, and I got to tell you, I told her after the first day, I said, I have even more respect and love for you after doing that one day because, oh my word, of course, I'm so worried I'm going to do something wrong, which I could have. And, it's just something that she does, but then I'll do other things. I tend to do more of the lifting with him, or moving him around or doing other things. But, it also takes two of us because he's gotten heavier. So we know both of us need to move the wheelchair into the van rather than me. Well, I'll get it, honey. Let me pick it up. And then I'm like, oh, my back. That doesn't help either.
Yeah.
So, it's a team. It just has to be a team. And we've been blessed with our kids that have always been involved too, and that helps.
So that was the other thing I was going to ask you. In your case, your other two children are older than Elias, so the sibling rivalry may not be as much as an issue because they had a lot of time and attention with you,
Right.
but it can become a factor in homes where there is a special needs child,
Yeah.
where by default the parents has to give the one with
Yeah.
special needs a little bit more attention than the others,
Yeah.
and the other children may feel left out, or less loved. In your case, are they sort of supportive? Do they help you with Elias, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean they have, and they've always done it. And as you were saying that, I was trying to think. It probably went all the way back to when our kids were first born, really, really young. That we said, first of all, family time is sacred for us. If we're having dinner, we're not answering the phone, we're talking, we're having it together. This, smartphones weren't so prevalent then, but it was like, yeah, you're not bringing your phone to the table. But then we always made them, one, always feel loved as a family, but then individually. And so we would make sure, like, if I was doing something with Brandon, my oldest, then I would always make a point to do something with Ashland, our daughter. And the same thing with Lisa. So it was important for them to have their own time with just me and just Lisa, and then our together time. And so what ended up happening is for years, I took them to, we would go get coffee on Friday morning and I drop them off at school. And then my daughter, she and I continued that through till she was 18. And, but my son and I went fishing every summer on a little mini trip. And then I would look for other things to do with my daughter. And I think that's very important for them to have that individual parent time. Now, and if you're a single parent, I think you've even got it harder and you have to balance that. But, I was at a conference once and I forgot the speaker, but he said, Josh McDowell, he said, a child spells love Time. And that's always stuck with me. But also letting them know that, I need to take care of, and I think I forgot exactly how old they were when Elias came about, but I think they got it that we had to divert our attention, but then we never ever wanted them, because we never saw Elias as a burden, but we never wanted them to think that, oh, I'm having to wait because they're taking care of Elias. They just got it, and I think that was huge, And then as they got older, it was like, I mean, we're very fortunate with our kids. They still want to do stuff with us. I mean, our oldest is 24, our daughter's 21, and they still want to do stuff with us. Not all the time, but sometimes.
I think it's a huge blessing,
Absolutely. Yeah.
to have that kind of relationship with your children. It just means everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, of course, as parents, we never stop parenting, no matter how
Oh
old our children become.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
always special in our hearts, and, spending time with them is always precious and always special.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
you
My
know,
my my parents are in their 80s and 90s, and they still, will talk to me like, well, now you call us when you get there, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to, but thank you. I do have a clean change of underwear too, so you don't have to tell me. I'm good. But yeah, you never stop.
oh my goodness. Wow, 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 wow. And so and in terms of just your general interaction with have you ever found how, balancing, I know that it's different for you now, but how
Mhm.
did you balance taking care of Elias when you were working full time? Because a lot of parents
Yeah,
are often torn
yeah,
between the needs of their special needs child and having to be in the office full time. I mean,
yeah.
you're kind of working the ideal situation now. But what about the times when it may not have been that ideal?
Yeah.
How did you cope with the conflicting emotions?
Yeah. And there's something I should share too that to me I think is important. So, before I left television for years, and this is even when Elias was young, I was a creative director. So I was like the boss of the department, but I had to be very careful not to take advantage of that. Oh, I could take off or I could split, and that, I mean, honest, I hopefully, if you ever talk to any of my former employees, they felt like it was like, I know we have work to do, but family's family. And because I had a couple of moms that worked for me, and it's like, I understand you may not be able to come in today, and we'll figure that out. I was very, very, very blessed. I mean, I worked my last station, the company that owned the two stations within the group I worked for. I worked there for 24 years before the position was eliminated, and they were a family friendly first company, and it wasn't just something that looked good on the mission statement. They practiced it. And it was just, I remember when I interviewed there, I mean, some of the benefits would not have caused you to take the job, but man, they were nice when you got there. And so I was always fortunate to have bosses that understood if I needed to go or I needed to shift my day, and my team as well, that they understood that there were some things just I couldn't control. And to be to me, it came down to communicating and not taking advantage of it, and just being upfront. And again, I was fortunate. I had fantastic bosses that would say, take care of it, take care of it, take care of it. Because it doesn't matter. I mean, life happens. I mean, people pass away, people get sick, life happens. Like we were talking right before the show, and I think whatever. And I realize there's some people that are trapped in their jobs with horrible bosses, and I never tell anybody they need to quit, but I do think that life is short, so people can read into that what they want. And I think you have to be very upfront. And thankfully, I was never, ever, ever in a position where I had to choose family over work, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm never like, okay, well, look, if you're not going to let me do this, then I got to walk. Not threatening, but just like
Yeah.
reality. So, and it's one of those things. And again, a supportive wife who realized that, there might be some things I couldn't do, like a doctor's appointment. Do you need me there? If you do, I'll be there. But if not, then I may not go to that one, depending on what it is. So,
But communication all round is key,
oh, it's huge. It's
with
huge.
your
Yeah.
employers.
And let me add to it, it also has to be trust. So
Mm.
if you don't have the trust, whether it's with your spouse or your employer or whoever, then communication is just talking, right? And I think having that mutual trust and respect, you've got to establish that. And you can't just go to somebody and go, you got to trust me. I don't even know who you are. We've probably seen videos, people go, trust me on this. It's like, and you are, we don't even have a relationship. But I think over time, when you see people's true colors and they really care about you, because I go back to my team, if I needed to be gone or gone for, a period of time, and then I couldn't extend that same grace, if you will, to my team, why would they trust me? Why in the world would they respect me? And there were times where I had to actually fight. Probably they don't even know this. I had to fight for them with other managers who didn't understand why they weren't in the office. And it's like, work's getting done. Don't worry about it. We're good. And you have to shield them from that too. But yeah, you got to have the trust, you got to have the respect, and then you got to have the communication. And I think they have to all work together. I don't think one is independent of the other personally. That's my take.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Trust is key, and it does take time to build it up. One of the things, there's a lot of negatives about the pandemic, but I think one of the positives about the pandemic is that it has refocused our attention on the importance of family life above work. It's, work is necessary. We all need to earn a living. But I think we've moved back to a time and space where people feel that it's easier to merge the two, that the two can coexist.
Yeah.
And people are more insistent on their rights. Gone are the days when people felt, there are the exception to the rule, but, gone are the days now, I believe, where people felt that, you were not working when you were working at home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I think people actually work harder when they are at home than when they work in the office. I also believe people are more productive at home because, you are more focused when you are at home because, you're tending to your family and your children, but that piece of work has got to be done in X amount of time, and you make the time to do that. So I do believe we've seen a massive shift during COVID and post-COVID, and I believe it's for the good, actually.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. It's a shame it took something like that, but I do think people have to define what their own success is. How much money do you really need? How much stuff do you really need? How many awards do you really, and whatever it is. And success to me has to be very personal. How much money you make and things like that. I just, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I think it had more people realizing, wow, my identity was so wrapped up in my work in the workplace that I lost myself. And I don't need to do that. Or it may have just been in a lot of places where they weren't truly appreciated by their employer, but it took that for them to go, you know what, there's something else out there. I matter. I'm enough to be doing something else. And maybe I can live on less, or maybe I can do something else. And you're right too. I think a lot of places found out, wow, our folks can be just as productive and maybe happier. And in some places, business even reduced costs too, not by reducing people, by eliminating, but by the ways that they looked at their office spaces. And so I think there were a lot of positives that came out of it.
Yeah, no, I believe so too. About the COVID period, did you, having a child with special needs, how did that affect you overall? Just having to live under lockdown. Hopefully, we'll never go back to that again.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I was already working from home before working from home was cool, because that's after the position went away. I thought, well, I did apply some other places and it didn't work out. And I realized this is what I needed to do. This is where I needed to be. So for us, him not going to school because social is big for him, even though he's limited in what he can learn and understand, he thrives when he's around other people, adults, kids, whatever. And so that was kind of getting adjusted to. It changed a lot of different things. We've been churchgoers, and that changed the way we did church. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing either. You know, from a business standpoint, I had to adjust my business, but because of what I do, it didn't gravely affect it. I mean, a couple of projects fell through, you know, a couple of conferences fell through. But I think from a family standpoint, other than just, I mean, and you know, where we live in the country, I mean, the area we live in, our state and everything like that, we could still get out if we needed to. And you know, it did impact us on a lot of levels. But we also ended up saving money too. We weren't driving anywhere. We weren't going anywhere. But we also did other things that we probably weren't doing enough, like getting out walking, you know, even with Elias. And it was just like, so we started every day, as long as the weather was nice. Let's go just a long walk, get him out. We get out, breathe the air, get into real reality, not virtual. And it was cool. So you adapt some and then pull back where you can.
Well, I, for one, am going to hope that we never go back into anything that causes us to live under lockdown
I agree.
again. You know, it wasn't, for me personally, it wasn't such a huge adjustment because, like you, I've also been used to living, you know, working from home for a long time, and living with a chronic illness.
Yeah.
You know, not having all that much social interaction was also not something that I needed to adapt to. So in many ways, it wasn't really a big deal for me at all.
Yeah.
But I do know that, you know, for others that that I know, it was a huge adjustment. But overall, it didn't affect me as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. This was great. I'm eternally grateful for your time, for the conversation, for your insight.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to be on. It's been a blast, and I've just enjoyed sharing. And just thanks again for having me.
How can people connect with you, Kevin?
Probably the best way is my website, kevinkolbe.com. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/Kevin Kolbe. Those would probably be the best ways. And they can leave a comment or shoot me an email, or I've even got a contact form on the website or something like that. But those would be probably the best ways.
Awesome. I want to just say a huge big thank you to our audience, and a huge big thank you to Kevin for your time. Totally appreciate it. And I hope we could get to do this again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.